The next fireside chat that we're going to have goes out to my agency people, my creatives. I'm a frustrated creative myself, so I really identify with this. Australia had an amazing ad campaign promoting tourism that aired during the Super Bowl. We all thought, myself included, that there was going to be a new Crocodile Dundee movie coming out. Turns out it was a whole intricate and amazing campaign designed by the people that are going to speak now. So please join me in welcoming Leigh Terry, the CEO of IPG Mediabrands Asia Pacific, and Lisa Ronson, the CMO for tourism from Australia.
Thank you all for coming. So we'll sit down. It's a fireside chat, so I'll take the weight off my feet. Firstly, thank you all for coming. I'm very excited to be here at my first InnovFest. An unshamed plug, but I've been around the festival today and will be tomorrow, looking at all the technology and meeting a lot of the entrepreneurs. As some of the marketeers in the room may have read in campaign earlier this month, that we're launching the IPG Media Lab here in Singapore, the first one in the world outside of New York, in about 3 weeks' time. So please, once the paint has dried and we've sorted all the technology in there, which we're doing over the next few weeks, please come and visit us. A lot of the content, both today and tomorrow, is very focused around technology. And I'll give a caveat to this session, that this session has been specifically designed to showcase and inspire through an innovation in marketing that's not necessarily purely technology. We use technology to the best of its advantage, but I think the innovation that comes through this campaign, and hopefully you all agree as Lisa and I chat through it, is very much around using data, bringing creative and media together very early in the process, and what I believe is one of the best examples of genuine, true integration. I think integration is a word that gets used far too much and doesn't actually translate into the business results. So I'm lucky enough to have with me Lisa Ronson, who's the Global Chief Marketing Officer for Tourism Australia. And we've got about 20 minutes, I'll crack in. Lisa, if you were to sum up your role and the role of Tourism Australia as an organisation, what would it be?
Well, it's very simple, actually. It's to entice international travellers, and what we call high-value international travellers, to choose Australia as their next holiday destination and come into Australia and spend money into the Australian economy. So tourism represents about currently just over $100 billion to the Australian economy, so it's a really significant economic impact of what we do. So very simply, we're a marketing organisation, which is lovely to work for a marketing organisation, and it's all about encouraging international visitors to come to Australia, have a wonderful time, of course, that goes without saying, but to spend in the local economy.
And the tangibility around that, multi-billion-dollar target. Again, the scale of the goals that you have as an organisation are, it's not even 7 or 8, it's not 9. It's got 9 zeros at the end of it. It's not a small task. So, given that we're at InnovFest, there's lots of different definitions of innovation, whether that's staying relevant in a time of unprecedented change, something that's novel and useful, new and different, or an evolution of what's gone before. What's your personal view on how you define innovation?
Well, for me, creativity and innovation they're intrinsically linked, and when you look at the data on the most successful companies over the last, probably forever actually, they're the ones that actually have innovation and creativity at the heart of what they do. Now that can be quite broad as far as, innovating on a very simple idea to make a message more emotive or more effective, or something that's going to change at the other end of the spectrum, a consumer's life in a really meaningful and impactful way. So it is quite a broad description. I think where a lot of marketers get it wrong is they think innovation equals purely technology. Often technology plays a really big role in innovation, and at Tourism Australia it's really important in terms of what we do. It's at the heart of what we do. It's one of our 5 global organisational values, and the one that I champion as the member of the senior leadership team. So we constantly look for ways to innovate, but at the heart of it for us, it's connecting with the consumer to make their lives a little bit better. And if you're focused on that, then it adds value to the consumer's life and therefore back to your business because you're focusing on the right things.
Now, I've been lucky enough to work with you over the
We don't need to talk about how
a
many
few years
Yep.
in different roles and different guises, and certainly in the financial services category where we worked a couple of times. Product innovation is, at the heart of trying to create differentiation and branded experience. Stakeholder management is slightly different in the category that you're now in, because fundamentally there are 24 million people who think that they have the right to say whether you're doing a good or bad job, and that's the population of Australia. Your product is their country. The fact that it's part of government means that there's political implications. Prior to you being there, there's been some very high-profile campaigns, some that have been lauded, some that have been absolutely pilloried, it's fair to say, both domestically as well as internationally. So let alone the fact that the Prime Minister, the Trade Minister, the Ambassador for Australia in the US all got involved in this campaign. The fact that your budget actually comes from taxpayer dollars, how much pressure is there on you and your team when you try and innovate? How much baggage does that come with?
I'm so glad you didn't say that to me at the beginning of this process, Leigh. You just scared the absolute bejesus out of me. But anyway, no, I mean, you have stakeholder engagement in every organisation that you work in. And as Leigh mentioned, I came to tourism from a very large bank, and there's obviously a lot of stakeholders there. But it is very different when the Australian population, of which your money that we are spending, and we never ever take that lightly in any way, shape or form. They do have a voice, and they are quite loud with that voice, particularly when we're not doing a great job and how they want to be represented overseas. So it's really never taking that for granted and really understanding that if you're making the decisions on the basis of solid consumer insights and data, and you're connecting really well with the consumer and what you know is right and what you know Australians are going to be proud of, then they will support you, as they have with this campaign. So whilst our primary target audience was the US consumer, our secondary audience and a fast follower was the Australian public, because we do have to make sure that we are taking that very, very seriously, because it's just inherent in what we do. We focus on ROI. Another one of our values is to be commercial. We never ever want to be seen as wasting taxpayers' money. We want to be seen to contributing positively into the Australian economy, because we do support over 1 million Australians in terms of their employment and their jobs. So there's a whole lot of knock-on effects that we do take very seriously. And I think once we show that, once we show it's in the core of what we are doing and what we believe in as a current team and what our culture and our values are, it makes it a lot easier to sell the story to the likes of, ministers and things like that. It is a little strange to go to Parliament House in Canberra and sell a creative concept. That's one thing I haven't done before, quite different to a bank CEO. But if the idea is right and it's based on the data, based on the insights, like anything, if you can tell the story all the way through, people will buy it.
We'll come back in a second to the amount of homework that we collectively had to do in terms of justification around not just the media, but actually how the creative came to be born as well. Because, as I said at the start, it only truly works when it works in synergy. But in terms of the opportunity and the scale around the US audience, Australia ranks 25th in terms of markets that US travellers visit. It's less than 2% of their total travel. So the scale of opportunity, but also potential risk of putting lots of eggs in one particular basket is huge, and the specific revenue challenge of growing from a 4 billion to 6 billion over a 36-month period isn't small. So in terms of getting those stakeholders over the line, over the 15-month journey that came to producing a 60-second ad and a strategy behind it, can you just talk on almost the process that we went through?
Yeah, well, it comes down to, the best utilisation of your resources. We are a government body, so the appropriation that we do get from the government is capped at a certain amount, and we operate in 15 markets around the world. But the three larger markets are China, US and UK, and they represent more than 50% of all tourism expenditure into the Australian economy. And what we found that the US market is a massive opportunity. As you said, Leigh, we're number 25th from visitation, but from an aspiration point of view, we're one of the countries that Americans really, really want to go to, but we start to fall away in the middle of the funnel and they tend to go to Europe. But then when you look at their advocacy scores after they've been to Australia, we're number one, hands down, in front of every other country. So whilst that's a massive strength for us, the weakness lies in getting them from the aspiration to actually coming. And a couple of things we know is that it's a very cluttered market. The top advertisers in the US market are spending about $2 billion each. We are roughly spending anywhere between $10 and $20 million on a lot of different campaigns. So we knew that if we were going to really turn the US around and take advantage of the opportunity, like Paul Hogan did back in the 80s, when he did those ads for Tourism Australia and then did the Dundee film, we went from number 72 on the places that the US consumers wanted to visit to the top 5. So when you do something that is impactful and it resonates, we know that it creates an impact and a long-lasting impact. And in the tourism category, it is a bit of a sea of sameness. It's a bit of a, I've got a beach, mine's better. I've got this, mine's better. So we had to get back to what was truly unique about Australia and what Americans knew about Australia, but bring it into a contemporary 2018 Australia. And that's where the whole Dundee idea came in. And Americans are travelling more so overseas. You know, the dollar is strong, so there was a lot of economic factors in our favour to do it this year versus putting it off to another year.
Just a quick show of hands. Who's seen the 1986 movie Crocodile Dundee with Paul Hogan? So, okay, yeah, good smattering in the room.
Yep.
Let's show them what we did.
Yep.
This ran 17 days before the Super Bowl. Have a look.
Good day, losers. Yo, where them kangaroos at?
Brian Dundee?
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Why do you keep saying really?
What do you mean Dundee's lost in the outback? He is the outback.
Nobody talks about Mick like that.
Careful with that knife, mate. It's pretty sharp.
A knife? How big?
What do you mean there's two of them?
Free beer! Free beer! Free beer!
You ever seen a humpback whale give birth? It's a bloodbath.
Speak to me, little guy.
Yeah, when your dad did it, he was much...
Okay, and when my dad told me about this, he was just like, yeah, I just came up and he did this, okay?
I just don't think he can see you from back here.
I don't just own this newspaper, son. I own this country. And Dundee's gonna learn who the most dangerous animal in Australia is. It's me.
Whatever. My mom's side of the family are all jazz musicians, so kind of comes natural to me.
Wombat.
So, very much a movie launch. Rimfire as the studio launched. Tell us about how we've seen the messaging in terms of how we brought it to life and kept the secret that it wasn't a movie to start with.
Well, it was a very planned way to bring stakeholders into the tent, if you like, to be able to keep it a secret. But I think where it all started really was the partnership between, UM and Tourism Australia. because we'd moved from demographic targeting to targeting a higher value traveller, which is more behavioural, the guys did all the analysis, and the one platform in the US market that could deliver 50% of all high value travellers in that market, which is a significant reach into that audience, was the Super Bowl. So when UM first brought it to us, we thought, okay, and we took it to our board, and our board were very, very supportive to go and find the right creative idea. And that was always key for us. We didn't just want to step up and go to the Super Bowl, because unless we were going to be in the top 5 ads, it wouldn't have been a good investment of taxpayers' money. We had to make sure that we had the right creative idea to cut through. So that's when we went about briefing the agencies in the US, and your team sat in on that. And then once we...
Just on that, because it's, again, genuine integration is about partnership, and it is a rarity, in my experience, that a client actively invites the media strategist on the business to sit in on competitive creative agency pitches. Why did you make that call?
Well, it comes down to trust. I mean, Chris, he really championed the idea from the outset. And, you know, whenever I had the million questions that I had, because, you know, you do put yourself out there as a CMO when you're doing something for the first time for your country, and there was a whole lot of factors and all the things that you mentioned before. And Chris was just, he always had the data, he always had the analysis, he was always on the front foot about how he believed in it and how it was going to reach our high value target audience. And, you know, it's just that trust, it's working as a team, and he added a whole lot of value to the process along the way. So it was just a natural for us.
In terms of, obviously creatively, for those that know Paul Hogan, having him as part of the project is as Australian as it can get, but shows due deference to the impact that he had when the movie came out in America. You mentioned about the scale of impact that he had. He even ended up presenting the Oscars, I think, in 1987. So having him obviously adds creative credibility, but with the new raft of phenomenal Australian talent, if I were being cynical, which, you know, I have a tendency to be, I could say that you've just thrown money at the problem and got a load of Hollywood A-listers. Can you just talk about how you didn't waste taxpayers' budget on that?
Exactly. Well, the thing was, the two linchpins were Paul Hogan, because he still owns all of the rights to the Dundee films, and so he was the very first person we approached, along with Chris Hemsworth, because he's our global ambassador. So we knew that we needed those two to really make it work, and they bought in straight away. Chris had some great creative input, and then on the strength of the idea, all of those Australian actors, you know, Aussiewood as we call them, that you've just seen, they all did it for nothing. And they did it for nothing because they loved the creative concept. It wasn't just because it was a Super Bowl ad. They're all very, very protective of their own brands, as you can imagine. They have to be. You know, when you're looking at the likes of Hugh Jackman and Margot Robbie. And so they just thought it was such a brilliant idea to, you know, hoax Americans in their big Super Bowl in a cheeky way that only Australia could deliver. And I think that was the key to the creative all the way through. And also with the stakeholders, it was, by the time we got around to Super Bowl, there were a lot of people that knew that this wasn't a real movie, but there was a willingness and a genuine Aussie can-do attitude that made it really happen, I think. And, you know, with our partners, with the creative agency Droga, with with some of our media partners that we brought into the tent, like News Limited and Channel 7, they were so supportive on the basis of the strength of the creative idea. Everyone wanted it to be successful.
So creatively, awesome, all kudos to Droga. On the media side of things, in terms of the depth of data analysis that we had to do to show that we weren't simply suggesting a Super Bowl spot and, you know, potentially being wasteful of monies. We talked about the high-value audiences in terms of it's not just Super Bowl fans, but the overlap with high-value travellers, with movie fans as well, because we'd obviously be reaching movie fans. The flighting of it in terms of what's the maximum time to launch the campaign and get the best bang for buck around social buzz. The spot length in terms of looking at the historic recall. Again, there was reams and reams of data that got boiled down for government to effectively mitigate the risk of something that was the single biggest thing that we'd done in over a decade. And importantly, the importance of the digital channels, because if you've got a frequency of one, when an ad's going out, you need that distribution and the noise to continue through Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. But one of the most important things I remember us talking about was that whilst it was focused on the US and we had to get the creative right for the US market, Super Bowl is experienced by wider than just US audiences. You mentioned China. You know, in terms of the importance of Super Bowl in China and how that's grown, that was obviously a big side benefit to doing this.
Yeah, we looked at the data to look at how we de-risk all the elements. And Crocodile Dundee, interestingly, when we did our quant survey, he and Steve Irwin still resonate as, you know, the best characters that represent the Australian way of life, even after all this time. And that's not just in Western markets, it was also in Eastern markets as well. So we knew that the character would resonate. The media guys did a lot of analysis on the best spot timing, regardless of how the game was going to play out and who was winning and how close it was and that sort of thing. We obviously got a whole lot of people involved. We worked with a lot of stakeholders to bring them into the tent. But I think the key was back to the creative idea again. I mean, I know I keep sort of saying that, but that was the key to absolutely everything we did. And then obviously making sure that we had our digital channels set up and ready to go. Like Super Bowl was just the start of it for us. We were ready on that night to unashamedly go into complete sales mode with our key distribution partners, with our airline partners, and also with the user experience and the offers that we had on our site. So we were never going to go to the game and then just hope for the best. We lined up absolutely everything from a distribution network to make sure that anyone that saw the idea, saw the ad, and they were interested in Australia, which we saw through our brand health metrics, they could go and buy a holiday to Australia straight away. We know that there's a long tail on holidays, which is why we measure it out to 2020, and we've got a whole number of key indicators that we measure from day one through to 18 months after the game.
Very, very conscious of time, so in terms of answering the question of did it work, if we can play the video.
Good day, losers.
You got your first look at Danny McBride for the new Dundee trailer.
All of a sudden, my news feed blows up. Danny McBride is the son of Crocodile Dundee.
Crocodile Dundee.
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 Dundee. Dundee.
The internet lit up when Chris Hemsworth appeared in a trailer for a brand new Crocodile Dundee film.
There's an official website and everything, DundeeMovie.com.
And you're like, what is this? I actually want to see it.
I mean, it's massive here in Times Square.
You all right there, mate?
Just getting a clean shave with my machete.
Now, the best look yet at Dundee. It features
Margot Robbie,
Liam Hemsworth, Hugh Jackman,
Russell Crowe.
Speculation is building on whether the movie may just be part of a Super Bowl ad.
Tourism Australia. Now, they haven't really commented on this. Whatever it is, the world are talking about.
Midway through the commercial, they start talking about 37,000 miles of pristine beach, mate. And then Danny McBride says,
Wait, hold up. This isn't a movie.
no.
It's a tourism ad for Australia.
Yes.
It was a commercial.
Chris Hemsworth's Dundee movie has been outed as a big marketing stunt.
You thought you were watching a trailer for Crocodile Dundee. I just thought hysterical.
It's more success than any film I've ever been in.
I want to say Australia, but it turns out Danny McBride just made that up for a movie. It's not a real place.
Fans are fighting to make the sequel a reality. Even director Judd Apatow wants to know when he can start shooting. A terrific campaign.
One hell of a sales pitch right here.
It made me want to go right away. Makes you really proud to be Mr.
Yes. It makes me want to go to Australia. Australia looks beautiful.
The reach has certainly been impressive.
All for a Super Bowl ad that's got to be one of the best in history.
You're the best Crocodile Dundee since Crocodile Dundee.
Really?
Very, very, very conscious that we're just over. So, Lisa, you've flown up specifically for... Thank you, man. Very, very, very conscious you've flown up today specifically for InnovFest, which we all massively thank you for. I know you've got a plane to catch in 2 hours because you've got a board meeting with the TA board tomorrow. What next?
That's the question that my managing director asks me probably 150 times a day. We're just working through what's next. We're obviously coming off a high base, and we want to always make sure, again, we're investing taxpayers' dollars, that we sweat the assets that we've got. So we'll make sure that we sweat these assets and then look to what's next very soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa, and thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much.